Marcus Chin had always been the type of person who stood just a little too close in conversations. At first, I thought it was cultural differences or maybe just poor spatial awareness. But after 3 months of working alongside him in our mid-sized marketing firm, I realized Marcus had a problem. A big one. I'm Sarah, by the way. Senior Project Coordinator, 7 years with Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. I keep my head down, do my work, and try not to make waves. Most people here see me as the quiet one who handles logistics and keeps meetings on track. What they don't know is that my husband Jake happens to be the nephew of our CEO, Margaret Thornfield. Not that I ever mention it. I prefer earning my place the hard way. Marcus was an account executive who'd been hired 6 months ago with impressive credentials and an even more impressive ego. Tall, good-looking, always dressed like he stepped out of a magazine. He had this way of talking that made you feel like you were the most important person in the room, at least until he moved on to his next target. The touching started small. A hand on the shoulder during meetings. Lingering handshakes. Standing close enough that you could smell his cologne when he leaned over your desk to look at your computer screen. Most of the women in the office had learned to step back, to create distance, to avoid being alone with him in conference rooms. But Marcus was clever. He never crossed obvious lines. Never said anything explicitly inappropriate. Just pushed boundaries in ways that made you question if you were overreacting. Classic workplace predator behavior, though none of us called it that out loud. I watched him work his way through the office. Jessica from graphic design started taking lunch at her desk to avoid the break room. Amanda from HR began scheduling all her meetings with Marcus in open areas. Even our intern, bright young Katie, who is still in college, had learned to keep a desk between herself and Marcus whenever possible. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in November. I was working late, finishing up the quarterly budget reports that were due the next morning. The office was mostly empty, just the usual suspects who stayed past 6:30. I heard voices coming from the small conference room near the back of the office. "Marcus, please, I need to get back to my desk." It was Katie's voice, strained and uncomfortable. "Come on, you're being dramatic. I'm just trying to help you understand the client feedback." Marcus's voice had that smooth, persuasive tone he used when he wanted something. I quietly made my way toward the conference room. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see inside. Marcus had Katie cornered against the whiteboard, one arm pressed against the wall next to her head. She was clutching a folder against her chest like a shield. "This is how the client wants the logo positioned," Marcus was saying, reaching around her to point at something on the board. His body was pressed close to hers, trapping her. "See? You have to really look at it from the right angle." Katie's face was flushed, her eyes darting toward the door. "I understand. Can we please go over this tomorrow in the main conference room?" "Why wait? We're here now." Besides, Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was a charming whisper. "I like working with you. You're so much more receptive than the other girls here." That word. Girls. As if Katie and the rest of our female colleagues were children to be managed and manipulated. I cleared my throat loudly and pushed the door open. "Katie? There you are. I need those revised timelines for tomorrow's presentation." The relief on Katie's face was immediate. Marcus stepped back smoothly, that practiced smile never wavering. "Sarah, perfect timing. I was just helping Katie understand some client feedback." "I'm sure you were." I kept my voice level professional. "Katie, could you email me those files when you get a chance?" "Of course. Right now, actually." Katie practically ran from the room. Marcus turned to me, his expression shifting to something harder. "You know, Sarah, you have a habit of interrupting important conversations." "Do I?" I gathered the papers that Katie had left behind. "I hadn't noticed. Maybe you should pay more attention to what's actually happening before you make assumptions." There was an edge to his voice now, the charming mask slipping just a little. I looked at him directly. "Oh, I pay attention to everything, Marcus. Probably more than you realize." Something flickered in his eyes, but he just shrugged. "If you say so." After that night, I started documenting everything. Every inappropriate comment I overheard. Every time I saw him corner someone in a conference room or stand too close at the copy machine. I wasn't the only one watching. Jessica had started keeping notes too, and Amanda from HR had that look that said she was building a case, but needed more evidence. The problem was that Marcus was good at his job. His clients loved him, his revenue numbers were strong, and he had a gift for making his behavior seem harmless when anyone in authority was watching. He was particularly careful around our department head, Linda Morrison, who had a reputation for being tough on harassment issues. But Marcus made a crucial mistake the week before Christmas. The company holiday party was being held at the downtown Marriott, a fancy affair with an open bar and dancing. I usually skip the party, but this year I decided to attend. Call it intuition. The evening started normally enough. Speeches from management, awkward small talk over cocktails, the usual office dynamics playing out in formal wear. I positioned myself near the bar where I could observe the room, nursing a single glass of wine and watching Marcus work the crowd. He was in his element, charming clients and colleagues alike. But as the evening wore on and the alcohol flowed more freely, I noticed his behavior becoming bolder. A hand that lingered too long on a colleague's back. Standing closer than necessary during conversations. The kind of behavior that gets dismissed as holiday party enthusiasm. Then I saw him approach a woman I didn't recognize. She was standing alone near the windows, looking out at the city lights. Tall, elegant, maybe in her early 40s, wearing a stunning black dress. She had an air of authority about her, the kind of presence that made people straighten their posture when she walked by. Marcus didn't seem to pick up on this. He saw an attractive woman standing alone and moved in like a shark sensing blood in the water. I watched him approach her, saw his practiced smile, the way he positioned himself to block her path to the rest of the room. She turned to face him politely, but I could see the subtle shift in her posture, the way she crossed her arms defensively. Even from across the room, I could see Marcus leaning in close, his hand reaching out to touch her arm. The woman stepped back, but he followed, closing the distance again. His body language was aggressive, predatory, completely inappropriate. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. His hand moved to her lower back, then lower, a gesture that was definitely not accidental or innocent. The woman's reaction was immediate. She stepped back sharply, her face flushing with anger. I couldn't hear what she said to him, but Marcus laughed dismissively and reached for her again. That's when I realized who she was. Margaret Thornfield. Our CEO, Jake's aunt. The woman who had built this company from nothing and had zero tolerance for the kind of behavior Marcus was displaying. I had seen her in company photos and at the occasional all-hands meeting, but she looked different tonight. Younger, more relaxed. She was attending the party as herself, not as the CEO, which explained why Marcus didn't recognize her. But I did. And I was probably the only person in the room who knew exactly who Marcus was harassing. I pulled out my phone and started recording, keeping it subtle, but making sure I captured Marcus's aggressive body language and Margaret's obvious discomfort. This was evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. Marcus was getting more insistent, his voice raised enough that people nearby were starting to notice. Margaret's face had gone from annoyed to furious, but she was maintaining her composure in a way that spoke of years of dealing with inappropriate men in business settings. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I heard her say coolly. I'm not interested in continuing this conversation. Marcus laughed, that same dismissive sound I'd heard him make so many times before. Come on, don't be like that. It's a party. We're all just trying to have fun here. He reached for her again, and this time his hand definitely crossed a line. Margaret's eyes flashed with a rage that would have made lesser men flee, but Marcus was too drunk and too entitled to recognize the danger he was in. Excuse me. Margaret's voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade. Remove your hand immediately. Or what? Marcus was grinning now, enjoying what he clearly saw as playful resistance. You'll report me to HR? Good luck with that. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Margaret's jaw clench, could practically feel the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. Actually, Margaret said quietly, I am HR. Among other things. Marcus blinked, confusion replacing his cocky grin. What? I'm Margaret Thornfield, CEO and founder of Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. You work for me. The blood drained from Marcus's